You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode 203.6, our Delta, Wapahani, Daleville, and Monroe Central regional previews with Muncie Star Press sports editor Cade Hampton.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengels.
Cade Hampton has been very busy this week. He's got 4 teams he's keeping an eye on heading into the Regional 3 from Delaware County and Monroe Central. I don't know, where do we start, Cade? Let's start with the 3A team, Delta. Two-time reigning regional champion, has a really tough test coming up this week.
Yeah, they got a pretty tough draw there with Blackhawk Christian and Fort Wayne. I know they're have really rapidly ascended the ranks. They won a 2019 1A state championship and then have won two state championships at the 2A level in recent years. And this is their first year at the 3A level, and they're still a pretty dominant team. 24-3 record, have a 6'8" power forward. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough draw for Delta, tough matchup, but I think one thing that does help them is the geography of the matchup, only having to drive about, 30 minutes south to Newcastle as opposed to Fort Wayne driving a couple hours. So have the home court advantage there. They've played the 2 sectional games here. They've, played here in the past when they've won sectionals, and they've won at this level in the past. Back-to-back 3A regional champions, So as tough as Blackhawk Christian is, moving up from 2A, this is their first year in a 3A regional. So might be a little change of pace for them. And, the way Delta plays defense, they can certainly frustrate them. So it'll be an interesting matchup to watch. But I know Delta isn't exactly favored in that one.
No, I would not think so. They've seemed to come through when they've needed to. They seem like Coach Detweiler has them always ready to go in the postseason. So we'll see what happens there. Should be an interesting one. I do not expect Delta to win, but we will see. That's why they play the games, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if Delta is going to pull this one off, I think very key player is going to be Bronson Edwards.
Right.
That Yorktown game, Coach Detweiler said that, when Bronson can shift it into that second gear and kind of take it up a level, the whole team kind of feeds off of that, and he can, kind of single-handedly push them to a victory in a game like that. So he's going to be a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, Jordan Fernie is another guy to keep an eye on. I believe he's the only guy who was on the varsity roster last year. I think maybe he and Edwards were both on last year's team, but yeah, Fernie is definitely kind of the most experienced player and is their top scorer, but him and Edwards are kind of the go-to duo there.
Now, a team that is expected to win would be Wapahani. All they do is win, it seems now. It came into the season not expecting them to be quite as good as last year because of the loss of a great player in Andrews, and here they are back again.
Yeah, they really have just been a buzzsaw this year, and watching Wapahani is really, it's so much fun to watch them play, the way they approach the game. Every single player, it's a very, very starting 5 heavy team. They really lean on just those 5 guys. They're out there pretty much every minute. Very rarely are they subbing out, but with Nate Luce, Camden Bell, Brock Zitgraf, Eli Andrews, and Logan Wolf. Those 5 are really just, the engine. And the season Camden Bell has been awesome. And Nate Luce, I feel like Camden Bell kind of was seen as the star of the show throughout the early part of the season. But, man, Nate Luce has made more three-pointers than anybody in the state. He's 109 three-pointers made this year. And
it seems like
all 5 of those guys are 41% or better three-point shooters. Like, it's just ridiculous how quickly they can go on like a 9-0 run, rattling off 3 triples in a row, and all of a sudden they're up double digits on you.
And this is a game Saturday. They're definitely going to be challenged. In fact, you look at the possible semi-state matchups, and I'm not sure that they would be the favorite. Lures and Gary 21st Century look like awfully good teams, but this is a game they should win on Saturday.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, you look at Western Boone; they only won 11 games this year, and Wapahani, I mean, clearly is just pretty tough to stop. So I think they can certainly make that run again. I know they were state runners up last year, and I think they certainly have the talent and are bought in and coached well enough that they can get back there. But like you said, there are a lot of tougher teams this year, and they don't have Isaac Andrews like they did to kind of power that run like they did last year.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying I'd be surprised if they won. I'm just saying I expect Saturday to be easy. In fact, I'd be more surprised if they lost than if they won by 35 points. So that's kind of where we're headed for Saturday's game. But there are going to be challenges down the road at the semi-state, and if they can get past semi-state, the state finals, a lot of good teams in Class 2A. All right, let's talk about Class A because that's probably the big one for you because you got a pair of teams going head to head, a couple of Mid-Eastern Conference teams, and Monroe Central won easy. I think the first time around, it was the second game of the season for Daleville. Daleville is a completely different team now. How do you see this one heading into Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is definitely the matchup that I'm most excited about. Daleville is a very different team from where they were in December, and the biggest part of that is senior guard Hunter Sukena. I mean, he has been on a tear recently through the end of the regular season, and then kind of powered the offense throughout sectionals. And they're just, I mean, the offense for Daleville is just completely different. It's so much. There's like an added element to it when he's on the floor, just with everything he provides. He can step outside and hit a three-pointer. He is really good at driving inside and has his touch underneath the basket, I think, is the most impressive part of his game. Because there's so many shots where he's just at the weirdest angle that I'm like, why are you taking that shot? You know, it's like it doesn't look like good shot selection, but when it's Hunter Sukena, it somehow just, the spin, the touch he has on the ball, it just goes in. So many of those types of plays where, I mean, and he'll create an and one that really shifts momentum in those kind of plays. So, I mean, he has really been a true difference maker. And then also another guy, Noah Colvin, standing just 5'5". He's usually the shortest player on the floor. And I mean, he just has some dog in him, man. He is nitty gritty. He is super aggressive about jumping for steals. He'll fight for every rebound. And he even got a block at one point against a guy who was at least 6 foot in the sectional championship. And I was just like, man, I mean, this kid is everywhere. So he's a great distributor too, leads the team in assists, and had a really amazing 3-point shooting performance in the sectional title. So those two guards are definitely kind of a dynamic duo there for the Broncos. But
And
then you look at Monroe.
Monroe
Yeah.
Central has a pair of stars for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Monroe Central, and it's the Easton Foster show down there. I mean, that kid is one of, if not the best scorer at the 1A level. I mean, just with his frame at 6'4" and the length that he provides, I mean, he's really tough to stop. I think he averages almost 22 points a game. And I mean, Monroe Central, it's pretty similar to Wapahani. I mean, with a player like that, the offense is pretty good, and they like to run a pretty fast-paced offense. But everybody on that team is also locked in on the other end of the floor. Justice Olam, especially at that shooting guard spot, is an excellent wing defender, and he is always looking to guard the other team's best player. Like, he is a feisty, aggressive defensive player, and really fun to watch. And he also has been shooting the ball a lot better from outside in their recent games throughout the sectional. So really fun team to watch. Foster is a pretty electric player, and Daleville really had trouble stopping him in the regular season matchup. But like we said earlier, Hunter Sukena was not playing for the Broncos yet at that point. So I expect a much closer matchup than the first time around. I expect a very exciting game, but if I had to pick, I think Monroe Central is going to win this one. I just don't think Daleville has anybody who can match up with Foster like that.
Yeah, it looks that way. But the good news is, either way, you will have a team in the semi-state next week, and of course, you expect to also have Wapahani. So you should have multiple teams in the semi-state next week, and Really, that's the best round of this entire tournament. Now that they've gone to, it used to be 2 games in the regional and 1 game in the semi-state. Now that they've switched it, oh man, that semi-state week is so much fun. So many great teams at all these venues, and really good year for Delaware County.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am extremely excited for semi-state. Very excited to cover one of the Broncos or Golden Bears, and then hopefully to also continue covering this Wapahani team because man, they are fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's just this is the first for me. Obviously, my first year of the Indiana sports season. So first boys basketball tournament. I've had a great time so far, and I hope it continues. Hopefully, one of these teams can make a little deep run, get me some good content.
yeah. The Bearcats showed some promise this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They got a really good young squad. Lots of talented freshmen there. I know we talked about Jackson Johnson a little bit before we got on here. He's he was one of my favorite players that I saw this year. Just as a young guy, the potential there is crazy.
Him and Eccles, a couple of freshmen, are going to be good ones.
And we appreciate Cade Hampton's willingness to come on the Central Indiana Sports Report and talk to our listeners. And we thank you for listening as always. If you are interested in the Central Indiana sport continuing to grow and thrive, please share these episodes with your friends and family. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.